equity mate.
I will say this about investing. Everything you do learn is cumulative. What I learned at 20 is useful.
Welcome to another episode of Equity Mates, a podcast that follows our journey of investing. Whether you're an absolute beginner or approaching Warren Buffett status, our aim is to help break down your barriers from beginning to dividend. My name is Bryce, and as always, I am joined by my equity mate, Ren. How's it going?
I'm very good, Bryce. Very excited for this week that we're halfway through. Crypto week.
Yes.
The week your dreams are made of.
Yeah, it's been a big week.
Yeah.
A few episodes to come to close out Crypto week, but this one I'm excited about, as you are. I'm
always excited,
sure. Yeah. Because we're joined by an expert, and we're going to be talking about what is going on in the crypto ecosystem, which is something that I claim to know very little about.
Yeah. I think so. We've got Blake, who will introduce us in a second here today, and then we've got Alex on the show tomorrow. And I think after these two episodes, we're going to realize just how little we know about crypto.
And then we won't talk about crypto ever again. But yeah, it is our pleasure to welcome Blake Cassidy, who is the CEO of Bamboo. Blake, welcome to the show.
Guys, thanks so much for having me. Excited to be here.
So Bamboo is Australia's first crypto micro investing app, allowing investors to invest in Bitcoin, Ethereum, gold, and silver. Blake took over as CEO in November 2020 and is working to scale up Bamboo in Australia and preparing to launch overseas. So a lot going on over at Bamboo, Blake.
Yes, thank you very much. Yeah, it's been pretty crazy over the last year, and we're excited to grow the business and take things forward.
If you missed our episode on Monday, head back and have a listen where we go into Bamboo in a little bit more detail and explain why we like it. But we think it's a great app. And here at Equity Mates, we're all about making markets accessible, and we certainly feel like Bamboo is doing that for people looking to not only get into the crypto market, but dollar cost average into things like gold and silver as well. So we have a promo code.
We do. So if you want to download Bamboo and use the code EquityMates, Blake personally will give you $10 towards the asset allocation of your choice. So you can split it across Bitcoin, Ethereum, gold, or silver. There's a lot of noise in the crypto space, but we think Bamboo is a good one. Dollar cost average in. Don't try and time the market, because if you're trying to time the Bitcoin market, you probably lose a lot of sleep and a lot of hair, like me.
Yes.
We think Bamboo's a good one if you want to dip your toe in the water. It's a good way to get started in crypto.
So we're going to approach this episode a lot like our CEO series, because we obviously have a CEO in the room. So we're going to understand a bit about Bamboo from Blake's point of view, and then, as we said, dive into the world or ecosystem of crypto. So Blake, are you able to describe Bamboo in your own words?
Yes, Bamboo is a micro savings platform that allows anybody to easily get access to digital assets. Now, the crypto sphere has notoriously been difficult to enter and exit, and we provide a very simple and safe on-ramp for people to get exposure to this exciting asset class. And buying digital assets can often be confusing and complicated, and we really try to take that out of the equation. So people don't have to think too much about, what do I do with the private keys? Am I buying at the right time? We take a lot of these questions out and give people a safe environment to have exposure.
So we'll talk more about Bamboo throughout this interview, but let's start with you. I guess, what's your background? Like, how did you come to be involved in crypto?
Yeah, good question. So my background's in something completely unrelated. I studied urban planning, and I studied sustainability in Sweden. Then when I returned to Australia, I realized that sustainable urban planning wasn't really a thing here in Australia and couldn't find a job that I wanted to take. But I was lucky enough to get a research role in China. I'm working with a Chinese urban design firm. I'm helping them do sustainable urban planning. And when I was in China in 2016 working there, I saw that Bitcoin was getting a lot of attention there, and that there was an opportunity to purchase Bitcoins in Europe and in America and then sell them in China. And I didn't know this at the time, but this was called arbitrage trading. And I was doing triangulation arbitrage trading and moving cash out through Chinese crypto exchanges, through the banks, and doing the trade again. There was about a 10% premium on some days. And the key reason for this is that Chinese people were using crypto to move money outside the country, and because of the capital controls in China. So that was my introduction to crypto and trading, and I learned a lot through that process. I was then came back to Australia and was at a Bitcoin meetup one day and met some guys, some ex-hedge fund guys, and they were starting a crypto investment fund. And I told them the type of trading I was doing. They were pretty interested. And one of the guys said, "You start Monday." And and I thought he was joking. I thought he was just a nice guy, had a beer with him, no problems. And I didn't end up going on Monday. I thought it was a joke. And then about 3 months later, I ran into these guys and they're like, "Oh, you never rocked up for work." So I ended up going in, doing some work with them. They started one of Australia's first crypto investment funds, fully licensed with an AFSL. And that was really interesting, learning about all the compliance that they had to build into what they were doing, researching new assets to invest into, and startups as well. We were investing in many early stage crypto and blockchain based startups. This was in 2018, and Bamboo was one of those projects. So not only did the fund invest into Bamboo, we all personally invested into Bamboo, thinking it was such a great idea. The founding team built an amazing product. I consulted to them for some time and worked with the business. I then went off and did my own startup for 18 months after that, and in the process of selling that now. And there was an opportunity to purchase Bamboo back off the founding team. So the seed investors came in and got together and pulled some cash together and bought the company, recapitalized it. And that was about 7 months ago. So since then, we've reestablished the teams and started growing the company from there.
It's pretty interesting story to how you have become CEO of Bamboo. A lot going on there. Crypto within the Equity Mates community is, I guess, pretty divisive. I think stats show that 75% of our audience don't invest in crypto. So we have a lot of work to do to educate the Equity Mates audience as to what crypto is. Why, from your point of view, invest in a crypto business, and more generally, why crypto? What's the bull case from your point of view?
Yeah, really good question. So what we're seeing with cryptocurrency and blockchain technology is a lot of innovation. It's creating possibilities for new business models that weren't previously possible. And because of the excitement around this technology, it's attracting a lot of talent that you could potentially want to back. And there's a lot of innovation happening in the space, right? So I think this is one of the key reasons why we should invest, because it's disrupting existing business models. Things like remittance, things like banking, things like brokerage, things like settlements. Previously we needed all these services to sit in the middle of things that we do to act as trust anchors. Now that we have blockchain technology and it can be used as a mechanism of trust, we're seeing things that previously weren't possible. So it is exciting.
Yeah, nice.
So there's a lot going on at the moment. It feels like every day there's more stories about crypto, Bitcoin hitting all-time highs, Elon Musk selling a song about non-fungible tokens as a non-fungible token. There's a lot of noise. How do you think about what's going on in the ecosystem at the moment? And I guess what do you think are the important trends? And then what do you sort of ignore as just the noise?
Yeah, really interesting. So I think when there are new opportunities for new products and services, they receive a lot of hype. I think the market overextends and then they scale back, and there are a few winners out of the hype cycle. What we're seeing with NFTs, which are basically digital representations of real world things that can't be copied on the internet, and people can trade these. So the NBA just released some NFT NBA cards, and I think they sold about $250 million worth of these things. And this represents a new business model for them that previously didn't exist. And there's a lot of hype around it, but at the end of the day, I think technologies like this are here to stay. We're seeing other trends as well, like companies that are starting to look like modern day investment banks and banks. Coinbase is an example of this. So Coinbase is a cryptocurrency exchange that's been around for since about 2013, and led by Brian Armstrong, and they're about to undergo a $100 billion IPO, which is pretty ridiculous. Then these guys are starting to knock on the door of HSBC, UBS, and Goldman Sachs valuation-wise. And I think the reason for that is because they're accessible to anyone globally. The market is so big and their growth trajectory is so strong that we're seeing, something that hasn't happened before in the banking system, or at least for 100 years. So it's really fascinating. We're going to see more and more groups like this.
So I think there's a lot to unpack there. But before we do, I think we should take a step back. We've obviously been doing Crypto Week we did an Equity Mates episode on Monday. We did a Get Started Investing episode on Tuesday. So hopefully people have listened to those. But if they haven't, maybe we should just establish some basic terminology and stuff, because I think that's going to become important as we talk about these trends and what's going on at Coinbase and all of that. So let's start at the very beginning. What's the difference between blockchain and cryptocurrencies?
Blockchain is the underlying technology in the ecosystem, right? And it allows us to transfer value. Now, cryptocurrencies are built on top of this, or a representation of blockchain. You can create digital tokens on top of blockchains to allow people to exchange value. And these can be termed cryptocurrencies if they're used in that sense.
So when people hear tokens, I'm just thinking, there's a lot of jargon when it comes to the crypto land. If people are hearing the word token, can that just be applied just as the same as a cryptocurrency?
Yeah, it can be. So cryptocurrencies are often tokens in themselves, but I think cryptocurrency describes how the token is being used as currency. Now, tokens don't have to be used as currency. They can be used as other things. So yeah, in some sense, cryptocurrency is a token, but I think it comes down to the use case. Another example of this is a non-fungible token, or a token that you can exchange that is unique, right? And this can be used for something else. For example, you could stamp today's headline of the newspaper inside of it and give that a unique number, and then that would be a unique token that you could use for any particular purpose.
So when people are buying through like Bitcoin or Ethereum through Bamboo, or many of the other digital currencies through other platforms, generally speaking, are they buying it to trade in and out of, or are there actual use cases for these tokens?
Yeah, really good question. So there's a lot of traders, there's a lot of speculators in the space. I think when I first started using Bitcoin, I used it for utility. So when I was living in Sweden, I wanted to transfer money home to Australia and transfer money to a friend in Portugal. And I found that using money transmitters was clunky and expensive. So I used Bitcoin. And there's a lot of people using it for remittance, particularly in third world countries who maybe using TransferWise or PayPal. It's too expensive. So there are a lot of different people using it for all sorts of different things. Really, I think it depends on where they live. Here in Australia, I think a lot of people are using it as a long-term investment, but we also get that portion of investors that are just speculating and trading.
Yeah. I think one more question around establishing the basics, and I think pretty relevant given Bamboo has both Bitcoin and Ethereum on its platform. There's I don't know how many cryptocurrencies there are
thousands
now.
Thousands
and thousands. I guess the big two are probably Bitcoin and Ethereum. But for people who are unfamiliar with the crypto world, I guess first question is, why are there so many coins? And then maybe what's the difference between the big two?
Yeah, good question. So Bitcoin functions as a store of value, or something analogous to a digital gold. It has many similar qualities to gold. People park their money there. They don't really move it around because it's a bit expensive, and the storage cost is a bit arduous when you want it to be really safe. Whereas Ethereum is really interesting because it allows us to not only exchange value but also run code on top of the blockchain. Now, this allows us to do interesting things that have never before been possible. And an example of this is building an application for voting in politics. And this allows us to not have to trust any third party for counting the votes. The votes are permanently locked into the blockchain, and no one can alter this, right? And what we're going to see over the next decade is our most important software be built on this technology. Another example of this would be remittance or property settlements or large financial transactions. So it's been referred to as programmable money. So you can write in how you want the money to interact. And maybe another example of how this could express itself is that if I'm transferring, my colleague $50 and they need to, pay a portion of that for their parking fees, you could potentially program that in and it automatically distribute to the parking lot. So similarly for taxes, if I needed to transfer you guys some cash and a certain amount of that need to go to taxes, then that could automatically be credited and the tax laws coded into that transaction. So
Do you need to be a coder to understand any of this?
Well, at the moment, yeah, you would be, but the user experience will improve over the next decade.
Yeah, I mean, in theory, the development path should follow like the internet, where it's like early days of the internet, you had to be a computer scientist or an engineer to really understand like what you were building, and now we have Squarespace and WordPress where it's drag and drop and everything's pretty straightforward.
Yeah, that's really interesting that you bring that point up, because I think blockchain technology, we have about 1% of the global population that owns crypto, and the internet, when 1% of the global population was using the internet, this was about 1997. So we're still very early, and generally technology like this takes 20 years to fully develop.
Yeah, right. 1997 led to the 2000 tech boom.
Yeah.
So we are heading for another one.
Yeah, potentially.
But then companies like Amazon and Microsoft and all that came out of it. I mean, is that the trend? Like, you were talking about Coinbase before, which is a crypto broker. So for people who are unfamiliar, I guess think of like a ComSec or a stake, but for crypto. But is the trend that we're seeing, like, are there companies that are positioning themselves as like, the Google of blockchain and the Amazon of blockchain? Like, do we expect to see big companies emerge out of this, or will it just be big cryptocurrencies?
Yeah, 100%. We're seeing incredible growth from some companies. Coinbase is one of those, and they're, reaching $100 billion valuations. We're also seeing other groups such as Celsius and BlockFi, which are starting to look like crypto banks or modern, the next evolution of banking. They're providing, remittance services, loans, yields on people's crypto, and Celsius's motto is unbank yourself, right? And these guys are seeing incredible growth. They've 25x'd their valuation in the last year, and getting a massive adoption. And there's lots of opportunity for organizations like this because they're not bound by, states or countries, they're global.
So let's talk about the finance space, because, I'm hearing DeFi a lot, decentralized finance. But when we were talking recently, you were also telling me about CeFi, which I guess is centralized finance. Is that right?
Yeah, exactly right.
So maybe can you just tell us what's going on in the financial landscape and how a layperson like me should understand the changes?
Yeah, for sure. So centralized finance is very much like the Celsius, BlockFi, and Coinbase. They're businesses, centralized businesses that are using blockchain technology to create value and building business models around that. Now, decentralized finance is when it's exactly the same services, but you're not interacting with a business. You're just interacting with code that's built on top of blockchains. So they're fully decentralized, they're not regulated, and anyone can do things like get loans, get a yield, or do remittance through them. So it's really interesting. We think that they're going to scale comparably, but there is a lot of debate in the ecosystem, of what people should be using. The purists think you should be moving towards decentralized finance because it aligns more with the ideology. But we are seeing massive growth as well from these centralized finance.
Again, not to just harp on about the internet analogy, but like early days of the internet, it was the same thing. There were like, internet purists who were talking about how it's like completely free, completely unregulated. But then as it grows and, the big companies come in and it gets regulated, and it feels like there's the crypto purists, but more and more, as more and more money moves into the space, that change will happen as well.
Yeah, I certainly think there's a balance there, and we've seen the prevalence of the open source movement, and we see big companies like IBM and Google using a lot of open sourced software, but there's a lot of centralization there as well. They're hoarding data and the like, so I think these things move in tandem as the ecosystem matures.
So there's a lot around the decentralization of the finance industry, but what other industries do you kind of see being disrupted by this sort of blockchain technology over the next 20 years or so? Are there any that are ripe for disruption? Are we going to see the downfall of Google or Amazon, for example?
Yeah, I think it's, Google and Amazon, I don't think are going anywhere. But, people that generally acted as intermediaries or as someone that we could trust in a financial transaction, I think their role is going to change. People like banks, people like remittance services, brokers, even accountants and lawyers, because a lot of what they did can now be replaced by these protocols. And I think these roles are going to take on more advisory roles if the hard lifting can be done by code.
What about fund managers?
Ooh, I think fund managers need, there's a certain amount of expertise there. And I think it'd be pretty hard to replace what they do with code. But yeah,
hey, a lot can happen in 20 years.
Yeah.
I mean, between AI and blockchain, some of those professional services companies should be getting very worried. There's all this talk about lawyers being disrupted by AI because they can search precedents and all that stuff really quickly. And then at the same time, if, you can execute smart contracts on the blockchain and stuff like that. So they're just getting attacked from all sides.
Before we move on, we're just going to take a quick break and hear from our sponsors. So in terms of other trends that we're seeing, a couple to touch on, and let's perhaps walk through them, is the adoption of Bitcoin on the balance sheets of some of the big companies over in America. What are you sort of seeing there, the likes of Tesla and co?
Yeah, this is really interesting. So because of the quantitative easing and all the stimulus checks that have happened in the US over the last 12 months, I think it was 23% of all US dollars were printed in the last 12 months. Many of these large companies with big treasuries sitting in cash are starting to think, take a real hard look at what these actions by the government, how that affects their treasury. Is their treasury worth 23% less after these actions? And that's saying that they have to consider. So they're looking at options to hedge out of currency. And some of these companies have come to look at Bitcoin, which is a deflationary asset, and no more coins can be printed. So they're using this as a hedging mechanism. So a couple of prominent people, such as Elon Musk and Michael Slayer, have put quite a lot of money in, over $1 billion each, and they're encouraging other companies to do the same thing. Michael Slayer, particularly, he held a conference with, I think, 1,000 other CEOs in the US, giving them basically the game plan of how to do it, how to manage the custody, how to change internal policies, so all these other groups can move into the space. Now, what potentially could happen here is that we see, dozens or hundreds of, the largest companies in the States move in this direction as a hedge against quantitative easing.
Well, Equity Mates has a I think we did it before Elon. So
Yeah.
Elon followed us, but Equity Mates has a bit of crypto on the balance sheet.
Fantastic.
So we'll be hedging against the deflation as well.
We should also hold a conference to tell people
Yeah.
in the podcast space.
It
what
was
we've
actually
done.
super easy. We just contacted someone and asked if they could set up a business account. They did, and we bought some.
That's funny. Yeah.
We just need to. I mean, it's not surprising that they are holding conferences and Elon's tweeting to his 46 million followers to buy Bitcoin because inevitably everyone's going to pile in. His fortune's going to skyrocket. So
Yeah, for sure.
Not surprised.
So you touched on the inflation hedge there, and I think a lot of people, who've listened to our show for a while would have heard us talk about it. Mainly in terms of what it has meant for the equity markets, and you can sort of draw a very strong correlation between the amount of money printing and a lot of that money flowing into the stock market since COVID hit. But Bitcoin, people often talk about Bitcoin as the hedge against inflation. There are other hedges, gold being one of them, and Bamboo as a platform offers both crypto in Bitcoin and Ethereum, and then precious metals in gold and silver. So you're really covering your bases in terms of hedging against inflation.
Yeah.
I guess, how do you think about the difference or the choice between Bitcoin and gold?
They're very similar in their qualities. Traditionally, gold has been used as a hedge, and similarly silver. But gold and silver, there's costs associated with the storage. So, I don't know if you guys have brought any gold or silver lately, but when
Bryce has a few necklaces that he keeps.
Yeah. Nice to go to jail.
Okay, but so there's a lot of costs associated with storing them. There's generally you lose a few percent as soon as you buy it. It's okay if that's a long-term investment, but it is clunky, and no one walks around with gold with them. Now, Bitcoin, similarly, is a deflationary asset, but it's far more portable, and it has potentially more utility if people can use it for day-to-day purposes. And gold has traditionally been seen as a hedge, and many countries all around the world have gold as part of their treasury. But what we may see over the next decade is that Bitcoin also forms part of government treasuries, and it's going to be really interesting if this happens. So, for example, if Germany or the US or Brazil comes in and say, hey, we need to have 0.5% of this thing, and a lot of other countries will follow suit if that sort of thing starts happening.
Yeah. There's been some articles and stuff about like central banks creating digital currencies. I guess my question is going to be very general. Like, what's the go with that? Is that something that would happen? Would you count that as a cryptocurrency if they did?
They are certainly using blockchain technology, the groups, the countries that are planning on doing this. But it's going to be not decentralized. It's going to be very, very centralized. The first country, the most prominent country that's looking at this is China, and with the Chinese yuan, and groups like Alibaba, encouraging this sort of innovation. And we are seeing like the Euro Investigator and other countries. Now, what this allows them to do once it's fully used and distributed for commerce is that they can, instead of they know where all the money is at one time. They can audit the whole currency with a piece of code and find out how much have you spent, how much taxes have you paid. No longer would they need auditors for companies or individuals. It could be a piece of code, and it creates extreme efficiencies. So I have no doubt that over the next decade, we'll see many other large nation states moving in this direction, and potentially one day, as we move towards a cashless society, every country will be using this technology.
It's also a political play because if the central bank are taking ownership of paying people direct, then the government aren't the ones having it on their balance sheet.
What?
As in,
I don't understand that.
Well, because the government aren't coming out and putting $1 billion in debt on their balance sheet, because the Reserve Bank themselves are the ones that are pushing out the crypto direct into bank account.
No, the government would still have to raise debt, wouldn't they?
No, that's one of the arguments is that it can all be sitting within the central bank, and they can just directly transact with you with their crypto if fiat is still in play, and the government don't have to be the ones to take on debt and also pay you.
Is that right?
I'm not sure. I haven't heard that, but it's possible.
It feels like that. Isn't it they're just going to try and digitize the currency?
I mean,
like the money system will still work the same way. Like the central bank will issue, but like
no, I mean to the point where they could have still fiat, and the government still takes that sort of side of things, and then the central bank can also have their digital currency transacting as well.
Right. Well, let's not get bogged down in this, but I'm gonna challenge you to put something in the show notes.
I'll put a YouTube link.
Okay. So a lot's happening in crypto at the moment. A lot's happened really since Bitcoin was started in 2011. If you think sort of 5 years, maybe 10 years into the future, what do you expect to happen over the next 5 or 10 years?
So first up, we're going to see more government coins. That's low-hanging fruit. And we're also going to see more blockchain-based clearing systems. So the ASX, for example, is moving away from their chess clearing system to a blockchain-based clearing system. And many other exchanges around the world for equities will move in this direction. We also believe that currently there's 20% of Australians that own cryptocurrency, and over the next 5 years that's going to move to 50% or beyond, and form part of many people's portfolio in the same way that equities do. We're going to see more large investment funds, endowment funds, and governments move into the space, and I think this is a self-fulfilling prophecy. As soon as a couple do it, then another dozen do it, and then before you know it, there's hundreds and thousands. So that's certainly going to happen over the next 5 years. And in regard to price, it's really hard to say where it's going. But if these large institutions do start coming into the space, it is going to be very interesting as they move billions of dollars into a finite supply.
Yeah, well, it's just a supply and demand play, really. Yeah. I don't have anything more to say to that.
Exactly right.
So I guess a yes or no answer is, can governments ban Bitcoin?
They could ban Bitcoin in the same way that they could ban the internet. So, I think what we would see to be a more likely scenario is it being regulated and restricted in some ways. And even in China, where the internet is regulated and restricted, people still use VPNs to have access to the full internet. So I think that's kind of the worst case scenario.
It wasn't quite a yes or no answer that Bryce tried to pigeonhole you into, but I think it was a good answer. It's really like, as long as there are people mining it and the blockchain is there, it can never be fully banned.
I don't think it can be banned. People always find ways to use it. I think, if one country bans it, they're stunting innovation, and they're locking themselves out of, lots of commerce and business. So they'll be doing it at their own peril, in my opinion.
So there's one other component I quickly want to touch on, and that is the cold storage element. And this probably ties into Bamboo, because I want to understand what it means if you are dollar cost averaging and building portfolios in these platforms. So firstly, do you want to address what sort of cold storage is, or how you can securely store Bitcoin, and then how that feeds into something like Bamboo, and if it's possible, and how you can securely and safely start investing in Bitcoin?
Yeah, so cold storage is a way of storing your digital assets offline so they can't be hacked. Now, this is generally thought of best practice, but there are new technologies that provide things like warm storage that are just as secure but can still be online in some capacities. Now, at Bamboo, we have insured custody wallets that hold our Bitcoin, and they are online, but they're extremely safe, and they use military-grade technology to secure the wallets.
Blake actually has a AK-47 behind him. Always got military-grade technology around.
Yeah, that's our security.
So wait, you said they're insured. So that means if my Bitcoin gets hacked on Bamboo, I get paid that back from the insurance company?
Yeah, that's exactly right. So The way that it works is that if the insured solution gets hacked or if there's some sort of fraud, then the insurance company would investigate and then compensate if there is a legitimate claim there. But the crypto can't be hacked off your mobile phone. It's completely separate. And yeah, the mobile app is more of an interface to allow you to buy and sell and manage your portfolio.
So that kind of ties in nicely to I guess, the end of this conversation around what Bamboo can sort of offer in terms of investment strategies. You know, Alec and I often speak about the value of consistently just putting money into the market over a long period of time, taking the emotion out of it. And I think that's what is certainly appealing to us when it comes to Bamboo, because you can micro invest into Bamboo, and then when that rounds up to, what is it, $50?
$50, yeah.
$50, you'll then take it out of the account and divvy that between whatever the portfolio setup is between Bitcoin, Ethereum, gold, and silver. And obviously, you don't have to use this platform for Bitcoin or Ethereum. If you want to stick to the traditional methods of hedging inflation or whatever you might want to use gold for, or silver, then you can also use the app for that. So I think when it comes to an incredibly volatile asset like cryptocurrency, Bitcoin and Ethereum, dripping into and taking the emotion out of these sorts of assets is a good way to, I guess, build a portfolio without having to time the market, because good luck trying to time a 40% drop and then a 20% recovery in 60 seconds.
Exactly. Yeah, exactly right. So not even the professionals can time it all the time. You know, it's very difficult and it's a very volatile market. So we've designed the app to help people be as successful as possible by dollar cost averaging, buying small amounts every week or month so that they can get an average price into the marketplace. And I think this is really cool, because when the price is down, you're buying more of the asset. When the price is up, you're buying less of the asset. So we've had some people do really well. They have been dollar cost averaging over the last 2 years, and have gone increased their portfolio by 5, 6, 700%. So the strategy works, and it's really great to see those success stories.
And then I guess when I am putting my money into Bamboo, are you then you take it rounds up, it gets to 50, you take it. Are you then buying those assets, or are you just buying like derivative products, or
Yeah. No, we certainly buy those products. We API into a cryptocurrency exchange and execute those trades instantaneously, as well as your sell orders, and then deposit the money into your bank account.
And then let's say I build my $1 million crypto portfolio on Bamboo, and then I want to take it into cold storage or take it off the platform or whatever. Like, what are the rules around that? Like, how do I do that?
Yeah, that's a good question. So we don't allow people to move crypto off the platform. This is generally done on cryptocurrency exchanges, and we're not a crypto exchange. We're a savings app, and we package something up that allows people to dollar cost average, micro save, and hedge out hedge against currency inflation in a very simple and easy way. And we try to remove the complexity. Now, once you start interacting with cold storage wallets, sending crypto around to other people in other locations, there's a lot of opportunity of messing it up. And there's a bit of a learning curve there, because if you send crypto to the wrong address, you lose it. You can't call the bank or Visa and get the transaction reversed. So we try to make investment effortless, and people can certainly go off and do that on other platforms, but not with ours.
Yeah, I think that's the main thing about Bamboo. It's easy. It's the easiest one we found, just in terms of like set and forget dollar cost average. Yeah.
So for those who want to get started on their crypto journey with Bamboo, you can head across, download the app and sign up. Use Equity Mates as the code, and they'll throw $10 your way to start in whatever your portfolio setup is. So Equity Mates, that's the code. Don't forget it.
I would be very surprised if anyone did $10 just in silver.
Yeah, boring. Yeah. Well, Blake, it's been an absolute pleasure chatting with you. You've got a pretty interesting background, and all the best with Bamboo over the next few years. We're certainly going to be following this one pretty closely. Equity Mates, as I said, is all about making markets accessible, and there's, many sort of offers like this coming to the market, and we're pretty selective in the ones that we talk about because I guess, can't talk about them all, but it's also important.
There's a certain other podcast that we won't name that has gone all in on crypto, and we don't want to do that, but we're crypto curious, as we like to say, and we think what you're building is pretty interesting.
Fantastic. So thanks so much for having me, guys. Great to be here, and hopefully we can speak again.
Nice one.
Equity Mates Investing Podcast is a product of Equity Mates Media. All information in this podcast is for education and entertainment purposes only. It is not intended as a substitute for professional finance, legal, or tax advice. The hosts of Equity Mates Investing Podcast are not financial professionals and are not aware of your personal financial circumstances. Before making any financial decisions, you should read the product disclosure statement and, if necessary, consult a licensed financial professional. Do not take financial advice from a podcast. For more information, head to the disclaimer page on the Equity Mates website where you can find ASIC resources and find a registered financial professional near you. In the spirit of reconciliation, Equity Mates Media and the hosts of Equity Mates Investing Podcast acknowledge the traditional custodians of country throughout Australia and their connections to land, sea, and community. We pay our respects to their elders past and present and extend that respect to all Aboriginal and Torres Strait Islander people today.